Morning glory and evening grace, America. It's Friday. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That means Ben Domenech is in the house. How are you, Ben?
Bye.
Ben, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good to talk to you. I want to begin with, of all things, Superman, because I listened to the Big Ben show, and I haven't seen it yet, but it is very rare that two people I get along with and like a lot, book nut and a sort of a genius, lives down in Tennessee now. He left California. He liked it a lot. He got to me before you did your podcast. So I wrote to him a note about this saying, boy, Ben didn't like Superman at all. And he wrote back, he relies on the authenticity argument, which is bogus. Everything he complains about has been true at some point. Now, Gunn did mess up Jor-El, but I don't care. It made for good drama. As to the Israeli angle, I view it as a war generally, not the issue specifically. Who the heck knew serious Jewish people and people over 60 knows Ben-Gurion? Soups was inspirational in that he would call the average current youngster to a higher standard that is common today. Would it fall short of the standards of my youth? Yes. Would it be a vast improvement over current standards? Yes. What do you think, Ben?
I mean,
Fabulous episode. I also thought, oh my gosh, if these two ever meet, Schroeder and Domenech, they're never going to stop talking about comic books.
Well,
because
I would love to talk to him about it. I don't know him, but I'd love to talk to him about it. And here's the thing: this is just a fundamental difference of opinion about what Superman is supposed to be. If you want Superman to be this kind of human version of
John Schroeder went crazy after this, and he sent me a second text after he'd listened to you again, I think. He said, Ben is dead wrong on the portrayal of Jonathan Kent. This pause is very authentic to a small Kansas farmer, very inarticulate, but his very minimal speech to Clark of UBU is based on a lifetime of example that taught the boy how to be a man and to be a hero. If there's a manhood issue these days, it lies in no small part in the fact that we talk it to death, but we don't do it. In all the years I knew my paternal grandfather, a Minnesota small farmer, I could write down everything he said on a sheet of paper. When I talked to my dad about that fact, he just said, yep, Pa Kent is inarticulate in this film, but there are many ways to teach besides with words.
But see,
Ben Domenech, over to you.
This is a difference of opinion because my vision is
Galaxy, by the way, is my second favorite series of movies other than the Avengers trilogy.
The two, Guardians 2, I think, really stands up in retrospect as being one of the best entries in the series, in part because that emotional beat with Michael Rooker, it actually hits, and you get a lot of drama, I think, there that really works. But again, this is a James Gunn movie directed by James Gunn, made by James Gunn, and star and has his brother in it. He always has to throw a role to his brother to make sure that he gets that SAG card.
Ron Howard, Clint Howard. Yep.
Yeah. So it's
to the serious. Let's get to the vegetables, and I'm going to set it up, talk to you during the break, and come back. We are coming up on Sunday to the 6-month anniversary of Donald Trump's second swearing in. All right, so he's been in office 6 months. I made a list. This is Hugh's list. It's nobody else's list of what I think he did the most important. The Iran nuclear program is destroyed. The threat of proliferation to a theocracy is shattered. Israel has been returned to the status of the equal of any of our allies, fully and totally in alliance with us. NATO countries have committed to 5%. The border is closed. The tax cuts have been expanded and extended. Key rates have been made permanent. Defense rebuild is underway, first year funded. Inflation is calm. DEI and CRT are exiled. Title IX is protected. Elite higher education has been served notice. Comply with the Constitution and the Civil Rights Act. NPR and PBS are defunded. Gosh, that is great. USAID is defunded. U.S. Steel deal has happened. The AI energy investment in PA has happened. And there are commitments of hundreds of billions of dollars in investment in the United States. And then a reader sent me the note. Pakistan and India, you forgot them, and I didn't forget them. I'm just not sure I'm going to credit DJT with that.
Yeah.
And then DRC and Rwanda. Of that list, before we go to break, we got a minute. Which one is your favorite or most important?
Well, I think those are two different things. To me, my favorite is actually the defunding, because that's been something that every Republican has promised over the years. They've all promised it. They've all said they were going to do it, and nobody's done it. And within 6 months, he did it. So that's actually my personal favorite, because it just, it's one of these things that always stuck in my craw. Every Republican says they're going to do these things, and then they don't do it. But the most important, I quite honestly think, is reestablishing America's presence in the world.
Yeah,
and
it's
I think
deterrent. Absolutely. Stand by, Ben. I'm going to talk with Ben during the break, and then he'll be back on the other side. America, don't go anywhere. I'm back with Ben Domenech during the break. It'll be on the podcast and on our YouTube discussion. Ben, as we're going to break, you said the most important is reestablishing America in the world. I agree, but I see that in the destruction of the Iranian nuclear program because it's real. Do you see it elsewhere?
I think it's there, but I also think it's our posture towards China. I think it's our posture towards the Middle East generally. The way that the Biden administration treated Israel. I think people have come to understand. You and I understood it, but I don't think the rest of folks necessarily understood how badly they were being treated. And I think that this is a situation now where the president has really reestablished the proper relationship that we ought to have with NATO, which is to say that we expect you to live up to the obligations that you've been making for years and never living up to, and that he believed that that was something that he could get. And I think that that attitude is adjusting. Now, they still need to live up to a lot of those commitments, but the truth is that when we look back at the Biden administration, he ran on the idea that he was going to reestablish normalcy in domestic politics, and that he would reestablish normalcy in terms of our relationship with the world, and he accomplished neither. He instead went far left of his career when it came to domestic politics, and then when it came to foreign policy, it turned out to be completely discombobulated. And quite frankly, I truly believe that there are certain points in this presidency where he did not understand Joe Biden did not understand he was the president. He thought of himself still as being the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee or something like that, as opposed to being the leader of the free world. And our complete disastrous failure to live up to those obligations, I think, really set the world on a course where we would not have been able, I think, Hugh, to survive the next 4 years without a major conflict. And now I think that we will. And I believe that that's because of the approach that Donald Trump has taken.
Huge. That it's a counterfactual, so we'll never know, but it's huge that we can even suggest that. By the way, before we go back on the network, we got a minute. Is the Lex Luthor in the new Superman as good as Gene Hackman?
No, he's not. And Nicholas, which is a shame because, by the way, the cast is not the problem. Nicholas Holt's a great actor. Cornsweet's fine. Brosnahan, I love from Miss Maisel. There's like some good people on it. The problem is that Holt is just like chewing the scenery in a way that is not entertaining. It's like the whole dynamic in the movie, he's like shouting out these orders to these people around him as if he's like the leader of a video game team or something like that. And it just does not, it doesn't impress. Lex Luthor should be an impressive guy in terms of his approach.
Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman was a great Lex Luthor.
Yeah, he was great.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That, of course, is John Andrazik, Superman. And I didn't expect to go that long, but these people are passionate out there. They're very, very passionate. Ben, I do not count it as an achievement of President Trump, but it is significant that the Colbert Show has been canceled. I understand you agree with that. Why?
So I want to tell you just a little brief story about my experience with Stephen Colbert. First off, I met him years ago. I met him at the launch of his initial Colbert Report. He actually came to Capitol Hill, and for whatever reason, he and I ended up in a meeting together with a bunch of people who were the representatives of the Republican press groups. So all the press secretaries, all the comms directors. Yeah. And I sort of interviewed him in front of them, with him making his pitch to them that please send your members onto my show. Basically, I really want to be able to have politicians on my show. I'm going to treat you fairly. I'm not going to be, someone who is, corrupted by his own political views. I'm a Southerner. I'm an Episcopalian. I have, some overlap with some of these. I understand this more than some of these Hollywood people. And I liked him. And since then, I went when he was doing the Late Show. I actually was on set there the evening that the National Review Against Trump cover came out, which I contributed to, which he talked about at the time and called me out by name and that kind of thing. It was also, though, something where I really saw the politics just take over his show. I actually would encourage people to look back at some of his record when he was on the Dana Carvey show, when he was doing some of these other things. He was a very funny guy. He has the capability to be very funny, Politics broke his brain. Trump broke his brain. And the fact that CBS is not even renewing the show with a new host is an indication that late night is no longer the force that it once was in our society, our culture, and is being dismissed by people, in part because it's just not funny anymore. It's three essentially identical shows, and Seth Meyers, Jimmy Kimmel, and Colbert, and then Fallon's a little less political, but it's still one of these things where just doesn't make any sense anymore. It doesn't entertain people. It's not funny. And I think that it's a significant cultural development, and I think that, quite frankly, Jimmy Kimmel should be planning ahead for his future, because he's going to be on a streaming network before you know it.
I want to add you're right about Colbert. Early on, I was on his show 20 years ago when I had a book come out.
I was going to say, I thought you were on. I didn't want to just say that.
And it was hilarious because I knew I was a prop. And he came in before in the green room. We had a nice chat. I think he's Catholic, not Episcopalian. But in any event, Northwestern guy. And we had a lovely, lovely chat. And he was great to me. He sold the book. He was very funny. It was completely relaxed. I thought he was funny. Now, I want to know, do you think it's him or do you think it's his writer's room? Because I think the writer's room, like most of legacy media, have been taken over by the youngs, and they're not funny.
I think you are correct in that analysis. He has 200 people working on that show.
What?
That is absurd.
No, he doesn't.
200 people working on that show. Okay, and I don't know how big that writer's room is, but the point is, it's oversized. It's dominated by young people, and they are just not funny, and they're very politically woke. And they're out of step and out of tune with American society. I mean, I'm gobsmacked. It takes 200 people to do an hour of television? Yes. He literally said that in his announcement, by the way. So it's not just me making that up. My suggestion would be this. If I was CBS, I would say, let's move the show. Let's move the show to Chicago, to St. Louis, to some or to Texas, to figure out a different place to put that show. Because if you are dealing with New York writers' rooms, you're going to get the same crop of people. They're all friends with each other. They all, tell the same kinds of jokes. And instead, what you need is the kind of people who are writing Shane Gillis's monologue at the ESPYs.
Oh my gosh, that was hilarious. Oh, was that funny? But we can't talk about it too much because it's Shane Gillis. Let me turn, because I got to ask you before we run out of time, about Comrade Mondani. I think it's suicide. I think it's political suicide, what they're doing. What do you think about Comrade Mondani?
I think the fact that Chuck Schumer, after all these years, doesn't have the guts to stand up and say this is unacceptable is a just total indictment of him and his career. This should be easy. Ooh. It should be very, very easy for him to stand up and say, this is not welcome in our party. This is not our future. It's not what we believe. It's not what the American people believe. We've seen poll after poll, and by the way, thankfully, encouragingly, over the last couple of weeks, that show that the American people still support Israel. And the simple fact is that the things that Mondani has said, besides the economic craziness, I mean, leave that out of the equation. It's stuff that you do not want as a toxin within your party. And that, to me, should be very easy for someone like Chuck Schumer, who has always been pro-Israel, to resist and to push back within his own coalition. The fact that he isn't, I think, is an indictment of him.
That's a very well put. A toxin within their party, and he's going to grow, and it's going to be like 7 days later or 7 months later or 7 years later. It's going to take over the whole party. It's going to be a zombie party. I want to close by getting you on the record about Epstein. I think it's all nonsense. I don't think there's anything there. I've never paid any attention to it until this week because he was a criminal and a horrible human being, and I think Donald Trump severed ties when he got a whiff of it. Yeah. What do you make of the Journal story and then the New York Times story today? The suspicious activity reports, that's damning. John Ellis brought that to my attention from news items. I didn't know about that. What do you make of the Epstein stories?
Well, I will just give an overall answer, which is that I think that the glow around Epstein as like a tawdry affair is in some ways a distraction from the actual questions that we should ask about some of these relationships that he had. ones that should have been asked and investigated a long time ago by responsible journalists and looked into. But I think that this is also a situation where the left is just completely leaning into this at this moment because they are smelling blood in the one area where they can try to create some discord on the right. And I think that there's some people on the right who are helping it. I thought that Free Press piece by Park McDougall, which Brett Baer quoted last night on Special Report, I would recommend it to people about the influencers who are trying to use Epstein to basically go after Trump and punish him a little bit for disagreeing with them on things like Iran.
Oh,
and some
interesting.
Of these other
I didn't read it. I read Uri Berliner's piece yesterday 3 times because it's the last rights for NPR and PBS. It's a great piece, but I didn't see the other one on Epstein.
Check out Park's piece. It's got a good point to it. But my overall take is there is not some big thing there. It's not the big, sort of solution to all, encompassing conspiracy theories that people would like to have. And so, what I do believe in is transparency. Go for it. Say you want as much transparency as possible. I just think the ultimate people who wanted something to come out of this are not going to be satisfied by the result.
They never would. A conspiracy theorist is never satisfied. They never.
No.
Ben Domenech, follow him at bdomenech on X. Go and download the Big Ben Show. Like and follow it. Subscribe to The Spectator, where he is the editor at large. And if you're a Superman fan, I get go to your separate corners and take a deep breath. I gather you're gonna have the Anchorman fight, the legendary Anchorman rumble.
Opinions too.
Ben Domenech, thank you. Have a great weekend. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned.